Hello, I'm David Hunt and welcome to Bent TV. My guest today is an artist, which is always good for me because I love the arts. The downside is he's from Queensland, but we'll get over that. He's married to a gorgeous man, Mark. His art features the rainbow colours a lot, so we'll get into that and ask him why and how that all happens. So there's so many little interesting twists and turns, so let's get stuck into it. The only downside is he's got a beautiful name like David. I'm not going to pick on him too much, but he calls himself Dave. Dave, how Queensland is that? So, Dave Behrens, hello and
Hi.
welcome to Bent TV.
Thank you, David.
Life in Queensland growing up, and you're from regional Queensland.
Regional Queensland.
Where?
Maryborough.
Okay.
So
where's that?
In southeast Queensland, if people are familiar with Fraser Island, Hervey Bay, it's a stone's throw from there.
Okay. So what was it like growing up in a country town in Queensland?
It was great. I did my schooling, was very into creative things, art. I grew up watching shows like Doctor Who. So
You're such a nerd.
I know. Doctor Who, Blake 7, Monkey, the original series. I loved all of that. It was good escapism.
Yeah.
And so yeah, look, it was Maryborough was a sort of a good town to be in. It had all the things like a picture theatre and stuff that you could do as a kid. So I didn't really need to want for anything.
Right.
It was I had a good childhood and good memories
Right.
from that.
When did you discover that you might have been gay?
When I was a teenager in high school.
Early teens or late teens?
Grade 10. So what's that about? That's early teens.
Right.
13,
14, yeah.
Funny story, I did school productions. I was in a number of different shows, and I was cast as one of the dwarves in The Hobbit. So there's a musical version of The Hobbit, and I played one of the dwarves. And the teacher thought that it would be really fun and good for giggles if I wore a pink outfit and acted a bit effeminate. I didn't understand what that was, but they said, just watch John Inman on Are You Being Served, and we want you to act like that.
Okay.
And so I thought, that's pretty cool. And I got a lot of laughs. I was in the chorus. I was one of the dwarves. Wasn't a significant part.
Yeah.
But, hammed it up and did all this stuff, and I had sequins in my little pink dwarf outfit, all that kind of stuff. It looked really cute. Got lots of laughs at the right moment, at the right time. And I kind of thought, this is fun. I'm getting some laughs. This is really cool. But I was getting called names, and they weren't nice names from being in that show.
Oh.
And I actually missed one of the performances because I didn't want to go on stage.
Oh.
And I was called things like faggot and poof, and I didn't know what that was, and I thought I was trying to do my own research as to why I was being called that and why I was being picked on for that, because I thought I was being funny. And so I got stage fright one night because I was threatened. If I went on stage and acted, one of the teachers had to fill in for me and put on an outfit. So
well, in a way, it was the teacher's fault that actually happened.
Well, I've analysed that moment quite a lot, because for me that's when bullying started, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I did it because it got some laughs and it was entertainment.
Yeah.
And then I kind of realised, oh, that's who John Inman is, and now I understood that, and I think that's actually who I am as well. So it was that kind of discovery at that point, that is me.
Yeah.
And so because of the reactions that I was getting, that's why I didn't do characters like that anymore, because I didn't want to be associated with that.
Did you tell your parents how you were feeling at that stage?
No, I didn't. I kept that well bottled down, well suppressed. And just it lived with that for years and years.
Right.
And it took me a long time to be confident in order to sort of, come out to them eventually, which I did when I was in my early 30s.
Okay, which is fairly late, but I can understand, country town and all that. And well, what was the reaction like from parents?
Well, I wasn't going to sort of, do it. I had actually come out to my sister and my brother previous to test the waters, and that was good. And it was pretty much, you need to tell your parents, and I thought, well, I don't need to put them through that, but I needed to. It needed to be done.
Were you still living in...
No, I'd moved to Brisbane.
Right, okay.
And I was seeing someone,
Yep.
and it was like, I need to be honest.
Yeah,
I need to, I can't, and I moved to Brisbane, and the guy I was seeing lived in Maryborough, so I was going back to Maryborough without telling anyone, and so it's like I need to do this.
But didn't a situation happen though with your father when watching Mardi Gras?
Yeah, Mardi Gras was on the news, obviously being televised.
Of course.
And I'm looking at it, and
How old were you when this happened?
Oh, it would have been around the same time I sort of did the Hobbit. My
okay,
early
so you're
teenage
fairly
years,
young, yeah.
might have been a little bit later than that. But I remember Dad clearly saying, they should just line those poofters up against a wall and shoot them. And at that particular point in time, I'm like, okay, I'm not coming out anytime soon because this is what my dad thinks of them. So again, suppressed it and just kept it to myself.
All right. So tell me, how did he react when you told? Did you tell them at the same time?
I did.
Right.
I did. I had come up to Maryborough for Easter, and it was a weird Easter. And on the Easter Sunday, I was driving back to Brisbane, packed the car up, so that if it didn't go well, I could just bid a hasty retreat and never be seen again. Or see them again, or I would have gone okay, and luckily for me it went okay. I sat down with them and I went white as a ghost, and they thought I was telling them I had cancer or something, because when I told them, it just came out, and Mum was like, I always knew you were special. And then looking at Dad, he just was silent for a bit, and then he said, I love you, son, but if I ever see you on a Mardi Gras float, I don't want to know you. But it was a joke. Like he was, he wasn't serious about it. So,
right. Okay. And did he remember that he'd said that?
Yeah.
That's why he made that
and
comment.
I said that's the reason why it's taken me so long to get to this point.
And what did he say about that?
He broke down. Like he's just like, from that point onwards, the relationship I had with my parents was just of total trust and honesty.
Fantastic.
Wished it had been done years earlier, but
So what was it like then in Brisbane? Because all of a sudden you said you had a partner.
Yep. Brisbane was great. Like, ironically enough, the year I left Maryborough, a local pub in town decided to have a diversity night where they had a safe space for anyone from the LGBTI community to come in regional Queensland to go to a pub from, I think it was 6 till 10. And just purely for LGBTQ people. The week I left Maryborough, they started this regular diversity, and it still happens every now and again.
Right.
They have sort of one a year now, but it's not as regular as it used to be the first Saturday of the month or something like that. And so Maryborough was starting to become a bit progressive, and it's like I'm leaving Maryborough for that precise
Doesn't
reason.
it always happen? Yeah.
But don't regret moving to Brisbane. Great opportunities there. I was working in the travel industry in Maryborough, and
who with?
I was with like a Harvey World Travel.
Right. Okay.
But they looked after the regional airline, QantasLink. In Maryborough. So I worked at the airport doing check-in and doing all that sort of fun-related stuff.
But what about Brisbane? How accepting was it for a gay man in Brisbane in that era?
It was a lot more. It was better than what Maryborough was. You could actually tell people you worked with and be comfortable about it, and they would be okay about it.
Yep.
So, having people accept it is great. So when I moved to Brisbane, I got a job with Virgin Australia, Virgin Blue as it was then, and they welcomed diversity and
of course
they welcomed people with their personalities to come and work for them and to create the great airline that they became. And so I had made great friends and had great business professional relationships there. You could be who you wanted to be there without fear.
And were you still in the relationship with
No. So
it
finished? Was like, for me, I was a bit of a late bloomer.
Yep.
So in my 30s, when I came out, that my partner at the time was my first. So. But then moving to Brisbane opened up other opportunities to meet other people.
And were you hanging out, because there's a famous gay pub in Brisbane, which is...
The Wickham.
Wickham.
And the Sporties, the Sportsmen. So, yes, I would go to those places regularly to, feel part of the
community.
The community, yeah.
Okay, you're an artist, and that's how I met you, through your art. How did that come about? When did you realise that there's an artist in you. Was it at school?
Yep. So I loved ancient history, art and theatre. They were the three subjects I excelled in. Hated maths, hated geometry, science wasn't that good. So the more creative things I enjoyed doing. Arts, we had a really cool art teacher, and we would play vinyl records whilst we were painting and doing class.
Fabulous.
So we were listening to Depeche Mode, New
cool.
Order,
Yeah.
really good alternative music, and that's where my love for alternate music began. Through his love of music and playing vinyl records, and that just helped with the creativity, I think. And so I loved that, going to those classes and listening to music and creating.
I found that because a similar thing happened to me, and other people I've spoken to, is that art teachers had more impact than a lot of the general teachers.
Yeah, when you're creating, you're sort of tapping in and you're expressing, and they were really bringing out your expression, your artistic expression. So they not only would they teach you how to do stuff, it's like, where are you getting your ideas from, and they would talk about things. And so it was interesting, having the teachers actually talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of made us, I guess, not maybe grow up a little bit more, and kind of, this is like, we consider that, adult stuff, because we're talking about adult sort of topics and things like that.
Fantastic.
So,
and playing the vinyl in the classroom and
he was cool,
Yeah.
and so I got really great marks in art because I just enjoyed it and I loved the expression. And out of all my subjects, it was the one I got the best results in. However, my art teacher says, unless you want to be an art teacher, don't be an artist, because you just won't succeed. And at that particular point in time, crushed. Up until that point, I love creating. This is so cool.
Also, you walked away from it a bit.
Yep.
The art.
Yeah, totally.
Whoa.
And then when I finished school, I got a job with the travel agency.
Yeah.
Because I was mainly interested in being a drama teacher. Not art, but doing drama. That was kind of my thing, and I didn't get the relevant required tertiary entrance score for it. So I had to go for plan B, which was, let's just apply for a job. So luckily it was working for a travel agency that worked for a regional airline, and so that journey started in '85 and only ended in 2017.
Right. So when did the art rear its head again?
It re-emerged when I started at Virgin. I worked shift work, and so I was working 4 days a week, so I had days off. And sometimes the way your roster worked, I would have 4 days off in a row, and this was like, what do I do with this time? And a lot of my days off were during the week, so it's like I can't go hang out with people, and so it's like, I'm just going to get some art supplies, and I'm just going to buy some paint, and I'm just going to have a play. And which I did, and it sort of invoked memories of my art school time, because you'd have all your materials and you would get them and sniff the paint and do all that cool stuff, so those memories would come back. And then I just played with painting and tried different things just for something to do initially.
But you've got a particular style, and it's quite different to a lot of other artists. How long before that reared its head for you?
I played a lot with pouring techniques and a bit Jackson Pollocky, like just throwing stuff on a paintbrush. Because obviously, looking at what other artists do, you look at those techniques and you kind of go, oh, I can kind of do that. That's fun, but that doesn't interest me as an expressive person. I had really runny paint in a tube and would do a bit of Jackson Pollock stuff, and I'm thinking, well, what if I actually made that a bit more controlled? What if I had some thicker paint in there and just did some more fine lines? How would that kind of look? And rather than painting one painting on a canvas, I'm going to divide a big canvas into 12 sections and paint different things on that and tell like a kind of a cartoon story, a bit like the screen behind us, different vignettes or hieroglyphs, stuff like that. And doing sort of my research, I realised no one else had kind of been doing that. So I was stumbling on something that was kind of a little bit different, but I was using some images and inspirations from Egyptian, Indigenous Australian, Mayan, a lot of ancient caveman type of art.
And one artist in particular that I picked up on, who?
Keith Haring.
Yep.
So interestingly enough, I sort of discovered Keith Haring after I started painting.
Yep.
I was in New York at an exhibition and met some people there that came to the show, and it was at that particular point in time they said, "Your stuff looks like Keith Haring."
Yeah.
And I went, "Who?" Didn't know him up until that point, which is interesting. So I went to a bookstore in New York and bought Keith Haring's autobiography.
Yep.
Oh, no, it wasn't an autobiography, it was a biography on him, but he had a lot of input into it
Yep.
before he passed away. And it was like, and there's some interesting things in there about the guy, and it was like, wow, it was kind of like, is he channeling me, or you kind of goes through your head, who knows?
Fantastic.
But he is an inspiration for sure, and I loved his story, and him being at the NGV, his work being there recently was amazing to see.
Yeah. Now, describe to people what you do, because you use little bottles, and I'll stop here, I'll let you explain.
So I have little sort of squeezy bottles, 60ml bottles with a nozzle, like a tube. And so I put paint in those, and then it has to be of a certain consistency so that when it squeezes and comes out, it keeps its sort of consistency and sort of doesn't go runny.
Okay.
So it will keep a really fine textured line, and when it dries and keeps the
so it's a little bit three-dimensional.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So it has a sort of a tactile feel about it. Not sure if I shared this story with you. We had an instance where I had a show, my first show in 2007, where I decided to put myself out there. A guy was there with his daughter who was vision impaired, and he actually asked if she could touch the painting, because he hadn't seen any artwork like mine where it was tactile. And I went, sure, if she can't see it, I'd like to give her the chance. So she started feeling my artwork, and just the look on her face was just so emotional.
Wow.
Because she could feel and see my artwork through her touch. And I thought that was amazing to be able to give someone the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to come back to the art, but you actually mentioned 2017.
Yep.
What happened in 2017? Like there's somebody that's lurking around.
Someone's lurking around on social media. I was down here to see Book of Mormon in the 1st of April. It's the date.
April Fool's Day.
Yep, on that weekend, and doing my By Melbourne check-in on Facebook, as everyone kind of does. I'm heading back to Brisbane. You were a great weekend in Melbourne, thanks. I got a sneaky message in my comment on my post saying, "Wish you lived in Melbourne," winky face, from my now husband.
So it happened through social media?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you were leaving town. What happened?
I think my response back to him was, I work for an airline, so see you soon. Something to that effect. And from that point on, I think we chatted every day, like on message and phone calls, etc.
So how long was it before you moved to Melbourne?
So the very first sort of cheeky message was the 1st of April. Late October, I was down living here in Melbourne.
Whoa, that quickly?
Yep.
So you
When you know, you know.
When you know, you know. And you didn't want Mark to move to Queensland?
No, it was we discussed it,
of
course, but I wanted to move down here.
Why?
For the art scene. The art scene down here in Victoria and Melbourne is just, it's just better. I don't, want to say it's, denigrate Queensland, because there's a great scene up there, but I just think there's just more opportunities down here just to see things like the NGV and the different things that happen culturally down here. There's more access to it.
Yeah.
And the coffee's fantastic, and the food, it's just too, why wouldn't you want to live here?
But how do you cope, Dave, with the weather though?
Love it.
Oh, good.
Love it.
Because, the whingy, like people that come from up north, the weather. And you go, I feel the cold, and I've lived in this part of the world all my life.
Yeah.
I feel the cold.
No, that's not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get, and he's a lovely man too.
Absolutely.
I don't know him all that well, but the more I get to know him, and as I said, having to put up with you, he must be a saint. So talk about your cat before we move on, because I love cats.
So it was Mark's cat originally, so I kind of came in and he'd already had a cat called Lana Del Rey is her name, and
who is a pop star.
Absolutely, yep. And Mark needed to have the 3-name convention, like Lana Del Rey. It had to be something like that, and she's a bit of a Lana Del Rey. She has her own personality, and she features a lot on our social media because she's a princess, and of course, she's a darling. Absolutely. absolutely. So
Now, let's get back to the art. Like you're saying that you squeeze it out with these little bottles, and it's got to be the consistency. Acrylic paint?
yep, all acrylic, because it dries. Well, even though, actually the one thing about Melbourne that is more challenging is the weather in relation to my paint drying. It's a different kind of, there's moisture in the air here in winter, and it will take probably 3 to 4 days for something to dry completely.
Hairdryer out?
Yeah, in some cases, yes, but hairdryer can change the consistency of the paint.
Oh, it could
The elements.
make it melt or something.
No, what it does, it dries the outer layer first and doesn't the inner layer, because when the paint dries, it contracts a little bit.
Yep.
So it kind of, if imagine your finger and your hand in a lot of water, and it gets that wrinkly effect from being there.
Yep.
My paint gets a wrinkly effect from drying too quickly on the outer layer, and then leaving that, because that's dry, but the rest underneath is still contracting, and so it shrinks it.
Right, okay.
And so it creates a bit, but I don't mind that if that happens. If I'm painting out in the elements, like I sometimes will paint outdoors, and if it's a breezy day, that same effect will have the hairdryer effect.
Yeah.
It'll dry the outer surface a bit first, and then when you take it home to dry in its natural element, then it can wrinkle a little bit, but that's all part of that process.
But it must be very time consuming, like and moving on,
Yes.
because you can't obviously touch it if it's, taking a while to dry. So
Correct.
you would have to do it in small little sections, do you?
If I'm working flat, then I can sort of move it around and do whatever available space I have. So a flat painting can go pretty quick if I'm in the zone.
Yep.
If I'm painting things like my figures, where there's such a limited flat surface, I've got to wait for that to dry before I can turn it and therefore not rub it or smear it or do anything. So before going on to the next part. So things like that can take ages.
Yeah. And we'll get to the figures a little while. But I want to talk about the fact that you're a little bit obsessed with the rainbow colours.
I am. Well, I guess one of the themes I explore in my artwork is the theme of identity. And my own identity is, you're putting yourself out there. So as a queer artist, how do queer people identify themselves? And it's with the rainbow flag.
Yep.
So for me, it's a beautiful, thing to see, a rainbow. And it's something that the LGBTIQ community gravitates to as something that is part of our identity. And so I love to paint them. So the rainbow colours is an important part of expressing my identity, and for some people to then have it in their possession so they can feel attached to something.
And what I love about it, Dave, is that it's not obvious when you first look at a piece that it is the rainbow colours, but then the more you look at it, you think, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes good to be subtle.
Yep.
Sometimes it's appropriate to be right out there, but I think it's, some people, for me, I've grown up with trying to keep things a little bit hidden or a little bit opaque, I guess, rather than clear. But now I'm sort of more confident as a person and as a gay man. I feel more confident to go, this is me, I'm the full rainbow, and I'm totally okay with that.
Yep.
So
and thank God we can be these days as well.
Absolutely.
Which is a beautiful time.
And it gives me pause to reflect on the times when I couldn't be as confident.
Yep.
But everyone's journey is very different.
Of course.
But for me, my journey now is, in some ways, helping people identify with their own identity and having something to look at and learn by or have in their vicinity is something that can help them.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty cool byproduct of that.
A lot of your paintings, as in a piece that's on the wall, and you would have to paint sort of downward, wouldn't you? You can't paint with them.
No, it can't be sitting on an easel because the paint will run.
Yep.
Unless you want that effect, but I don't.
No.
I want it to stay put.
Yeah. So there you are. You're doing it. But what I find about looking at a lot of your work, it's might be on a square canvas, but there's an actual circle, or there's a bird, or there's a butterfly that you you keep the square image, but inside it's a circle or it's whatever.
Yeah.
What is it about making it quite different, the way that you look at your art.
That I was very inspired by hieroglyphics, and hieroglyphics is very sectionalized as well, and so they told their story or their language via symbols, and so what I like to do is like have a symbol that is recognizable to somebody, so they feel a familiarity towards it, yet the pattern might be different.
Yep.
And it might be something really unique. It might be symbols, and they could look something from Stargate or from a sci-fi show, or they could be the peace sign, which is something universally known and recognized. And then I'll put my identity within an object like a peace sign or a butterfly or something like that. So there's some familiarity for people to feel attachment to, because they may have a connection to butterflies or whatever. I mean, I do Lego men as well. So pop culture is a big thing to sort of play with and explore, but still keep it relatively unique to my own.
Well, let's talk about pop culture, because a nice little segue there, Dave. Good on you. Thank you for helping me out. Let's talk about the figures that you do, which I love, and you've given me one, so thank you again. Tell us, what are they, and why are they so big around the world? Not so much here, but and you're known around the world because of these figures.
Yeah. I'm starting to really get out there as a customiser. We'll talk about customizing in a minute. But the designer toy industry sort of took off around 2007, so it hasn't been around long.
No.
And it's
mostly Asian, like Japan in particular.
Well, Asia, it's very big. China, it's huge. There's a company people may be familiar with called Pop Mart. They started in Beijing.
Yep.
And they basically work with artists to design a particular type of toy. And then what they do is they have different versions of that. They put them into a series, so there might be 15 of them, and then they'll throw them into a blind box, so you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And so they are targeting not children, they're targeting young adults and adults, to collect.
Okay,
Now,
so you get in the post a box, but you don't know what image you're getting.
You don't know what you're getting, and that's the surprise. So
Awesome.
You may get one that is a common. So a common is a word used a lot. That is, there might be a lot of them made in that particular run.
Okay.
Or you might get one that is, 1 out of 1,000. It's considered ultra rare.
Yeah.
And it's called what they call a chase. So it's something that you're after to complete a collection. So it's about being a collector and a completionist. So it's feeding into those desires to have something to collect.
Yeah. Now yours are they're little guys almost. How do you describe them? What are the image that you would? And it's obviously it's like a toy, but what do you call them?
Well, they are called toys. So they're not skirting around that name and avoiding using it.
Yep.
It's a toy, but it's not. I guess toys are something that you would think that kids play with.
Yep.
But then there are things that children will collect, that Barbies, and they're all different types of ones that are potentially limited edition and therefore can increase in value, that you don't play with, that you store in a glass cabinet and then you can hand down to.
So they're more than a toy, because they're very adult and you want them as an object on a shelf.
Absolutely. I think artists have been given more opportunity to sort of express themselves on this type of platform now. People are used to seeing just a painting and having that on their wall. This is just giving collectors and even art enthusiasts or people that just like a nice vase or an object in their living space, something that's a bit different. And so artists are given the opportunity to sort of express themselves, and these sorts of designs and things make this more than just a toy. It's something that can just sit there and I guess be a connection to that person for why they've got it, because everyone has their own reasons for having stuff in their lives. And
even to the extent, and this is a little bit of Keith Herron coming out in you, is that a mannequin, like a store mannequin.
Yes.
Are they called mannequins? They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you've painted the whole body of one. Instead of a small object, you've painted 6 foot tall.
I went a full-size person, and when I started doing the little figures, it was like a moment where I go, what can I do next? I can paint on anything that's more than flat.
Yep.
So again, a new opportunity to look at something else. And it's like these mannequins, like a full-size one, they have flat surfaces. It took me months to do, by the way.
Did it?
It was an opportunity to decorate, tell a story, and it just looks like, once it's all completed, it looks like they've just got this thin skin of colour, and again, it just looks like for me, it was like, what's under the skin? Is it these patterns? It's not an item of clothing that's decorating the body, it's what's underneath. So it was just something cool to explore.
Yeah. When I spoke to you a few months back, you were telling me about an exhibition that you were part of in New York?
Yes, it was in Syracuse in New York.
Yeah.
One of my collectors that have got quite a few pieces of my work.
Dave, how did he find you? Was it through social media? Or?
Yeah, so look, one thing about the designer toy industry is that they have a very, very passionate fan base. Like a lot of things, there's fan bases and fans of a lot of different things, and so there's groups on Facebook and where like-minded people and artists and collectors can go and talk about the work, trade work. So if you've bought a piece and you want to trade with someone else, there's a real sense of community around that.
How hard is it sort of, like getting into that scene? Like, did you have to do a lot of work, like to get into that scene, and or did you just start following certain people, and then because of that, word of mouth got out about you?
Yeah, it's just, I guess, being part of little groups, following people, sharing your work, and then them appreciating it and giving you feedback on that, and then it just builds. I would love to see my work on an actual production model of a toy, and I'm just quietly working in the background on that. And part of that is, being visible to companies, putting yourself out there, showing what you can do, and then, as a byproduct of that, potentially getting chosen to be an artist under their stable. Okay,
so here you are, this collector has a few of your pieces. And what was the exhibition? Was it like all different collectors, or was it just one collector?
It was one collector, their whole collection, which was about 700 pieces.
Oh,
so
right.
They collect a lot of production work, so work that's already made by the toy companies, and then artists like myself, we call ourselves customizers. So we'll get an existing piece and we'll paint over it, and then we'll put our own spin on it. And so that's kind of what I do with my work.
Yep.
And so I then put that out there, and then I threw them on places like eBay and stuff like that. And that's how I met this particular collector. He saw my piece on eBay, bought it, and then we started a bit of a conversation around, I would buy some of their older pieces from them and paint on them. And then he was doing a degree in his uni about art curation, and so he decided to do an art exhibition called More Than a Toy, that these pieces represent different eras. So there was some Black Lives Matter, there was some equality and inclusivity artists. So it is more about just a toy that a child can play with. This is something that means something to a person or to a group, and you have an attachment and a connection to it.
And so it was an exhibition that people could go and see.
Yeah, so it was right in the middle of USA COVID restrictions. However, they had some social distancing in place where people could go with the masks and the proper precautions. But they did a fabulous thing with a virtual exhibition. So you could just go onto a link and actually wander around the exhibition and see all the pieces as if you were actually there. So unfortunately, I couldn't be there for it, but I did a wonderful thing whereby I was asked to do a painting demonstration via Zoom. And so we had a class of 26 people came in that were in the exhibition space, so you could see all the different toys. And then I came in via Zoom from Australia at 6 a.m. in the morning because it was like 6 p.m. USA time the night before. And I painted a whole heap of figures for them, sent them over, and I took them through painting, and they painted their own versions of the toy. And it was interesting, a lot of people didn't copy me, but they used the technique but did something different with it, and that was really cool to see. That was just a really cool moment to, one, do something remotely that you would think you couldn't do, but thanks to COVID, we're thinking a bit more about how we can put ourselves out there. I would have loved to have been in Syracuse, New York to do a live painting demonstration.
Yeah.
That would have been a fun thing to do. But to connect with 20 or so people, to look at my artwork and tell my story was a really, really cool thing to do.
Yeah, and also it's good for you as an artist to be recognised in this, being part of this exhibition, being part of that Zoom with that class. It's just building your reputation.
Yeah, and
isn't
the
it?
profile, it's all about, social media is such a great tool for artists to use.
Yeah.
When I was sort of before the internet, there wasn't a platform for artists. You had to try and find a gallery, or you didn't.
Yep.
You didn't exist.
Yeah.
So
well, you need to do an exhibition real soon.
Working on it.
Yeah, working on it. Dave Behrens, thank you so much for chatting to us today.
Thank you, David.
You've been watching Ben TV. I'm David Hunt, and of course, we'll see you again real soon.